She walked into the most dangerous room in Seoul with mud on her feet, a bucket of okra balanced on her hip, and absolutely no idea that the man sitting at the head of that long candlelit table had ordered someone removed from this earth exactly 31 minutes ago. And he looked at her like she was the first real thing he had seen in years. Not with hunger. Not with calculation. With something far more dangerous than either of those things. With recognition. Like somewhere in the back of a life built entirely from darkness, something in him already knew her. She did not know that yet. She was just trying to sell her vegetables. And that specific combination of her not knowing and him already feeling it, is exactly where this story begins. Stay right here because I promise you, by the time this is over, you will not know whether to cry, scream, or start over from the beginning. This is the kind of story that gets into your chest and lives there. If you are new to this channel, welcome home. Melanin Soul Tales is where love stories are told the way they deserve to be told, with fire, with pain, with culture, and with complete honesty. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because this story has 2 parts, and you cannot afford to miss a single second of what is coming. And if you are already family, you already know what to do. Settle in. We are going all the way. Now let us go back to the beginning. Her name was Zinhle Obi. Not Amara. Not any of the names people expected a girl from the red clay roads of Abeokuta to carry. Her grandmother had named her Zinhle, a Zulu word meaning beautiful, because her grandmother believed that beauty should be named before the world had a chance to decide what it was. Her last name, Obi, came from her father, a quiet man who grew yams and believed that a good harvest was the closest thing to God that human hands could reach. Zinhle was 23 years old. She had never been on a plane before this trip. She had never eaten sushi. She had never owned a pair of heels that did not belong to someone else first. But she had a mind sharp enough to cut glass, hands that could pull life from dry cracked soil, and a mouth that had never learned how to lie even when lying would have been the far easier and far safer thing to do. She had come to Seoul 6 weeks ago on a 3-month agricultural exchange program that her state government had quietly funded and even more quietly forgotten about. The program was real. The stipend was not. The accommodation that was supposed to be waiting at arrival had gone to someone else. A clerical error, they said, as though a clerical error was not a human being sleeping in a university office for 4 nights straight until a kind professor named Dr. Yoon found her and offered a spare room without making her feel like a charity case. She was supposed to be in a laboratory studying soil irrigation systems. Instead, she was growing vegetables in Dr. Yoon's backyard plot and selling them at a weekend market in Mapo-gu, because her stipend had still not arrived, and her pride would not let her eat on someone else's money without contributing something in return. That was the kind of woman Zinhle was. That Saturday evening the market closed early because of a private event in the district. Organizers sent everyone home, with little notice and zero apology. Zinhle had packed most of her things, but still had a full bucket of fresh okra that a buyer had ordered and then simply vanished on. She was not going to throw it away. She was going to find another buyer. That decision, that specific, stubborn, deeply Zinhle decision, was the reason everything happened. A man outside the market spoke very fast Hangul and gestured toward a building she understood to be a restaurant that accepted vendor walk-ins. The building was the kind of beautiful that came from money rather than effort, tall, dark glass, immaculate. There was a side entrance with the door open. A catering staff member in a white uniform rushed past her without looking up, and she followed the sound of movement and plates without thinking twice. She went through a service corridor, turned left when she should have turned right, pushed a door that should have been locked, and stepped directly into a private dining room where 12 men in tailored suits sat around a table that probably cost more than her entire village earned in 3 months combined. The room stopped. Not became quiet. Stopped. The kind of silence that has physical weight. The kind that lands on your skin. Zinhle stood there with her bucket of okra on her hip, barefoot because she had removed her sandals in the corridor to shake out a stone, and she looked at 12 faces looking back at her with expressions that ranged from dangerous to lethal. 11 of those faces were various grades of cold. Hard jaws. Eyes that did not blink unnecessarily. The specific stillness of men who responded to unexpected things with controlled violence rather than confusion. The 12th face was at the head of the table. His name was Ryu Chaeon. 31 years old. Acting head of the Chaeon criminal network for 4 years following his father's stroke. He had reorganized the network's financial arms, eliminated 3 internal power threats without a single public scandal, and maintained relationships with officials in 4 government ministries through channels that existed nowhere on paper. He was not a man who showed surprise. But when Zinhle Obi walked through that door with her bucket of okra and her bare feet, and looked around his private meeting with the expression of someone who had simply taken a wrong turn at a supermarket, Ryu Chaeon did something that 12 of his most senior people had never witnessed in 4 years of watching him closely. He almost smiled. It did not reach his mouth. It was something in his eyes only. A light switching on in a room that had been dark for so long the darkness had started to feel like furniture. One of the men at the table, a broad-shouldered lieutenant named Pyo, was already rising from his seat. His hand was moving towards something beneath his jacket with the practiced ease of a man who had made that particular movement many times before. Chaeon raised 2 fingers. Pyo went still. The room stayed stopped. Chaeon looked at Zinhle. When he spoke, his voice was very low. The kind of voice that did not need volume. "You are lost." In English. Because he had read her in under 3 seconds. Zinhle blinked. She looked around the room properly this time, really looked. 12 men. No menus. No food. Documents spread across the table. Folders. The kind of serious that had absolutely nothing to do with dinner. "I think I took the wrong door," she said. "You think," he repeated. "I know," she corrected. "I know I took the wrong door. I was looking for someone who wanted to buy okra." Not one person in that room moved. Zinhle shifted the bucket to her other hip. "I will go." "Wait," Chaeon said. She waited. She was not entirely sure why. Something in the single word made leaving feel like it required something from her first. He studied her for a moment with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then he looked at the bucket. "How much for all of it?" She stared at him. "The okra." "Yes." She named her price. "Fair." Straightforward. The same number she would have told anyone at the market without blinking. He named a number 3 times higher. "That is too much," she said. Every man in that room exchanged a look with someone else. Chaeon's expression did not shift by a single degree. "Most people do not argue when I offer them more than they asked for. Most people," Zinhle said, "are not running a fair business." The silence that followed that sentence was extraordinary. Then Chaeon called a member of the service staff and instructed them to take the okra to the kitchen and pay the woman exactly what she asked for. He watched the entire exchange happen. He watched Zinhle count the money, nod once in clean satisfaction, and turn toward the door. "Your name," he said. She turned back. "Zinhle." He repeated it. Not perfectly. But he tried. And he tried again. And the trying mattered more than the result. She left. The meeting resumed. But Ryu Chaeon did not look at a single document for the remainder of that evening. He sat at the head of his table while his lieutenants discussed figures and territories, and he thought about a woman with mud on her feet who had walked into the most dangerous room in Seoul and told him his price was wrong. He thought about it for 7 days straight. She did not think about it. Or she tried not to. The truth, the honest, inconvenient truth, was that Zinhle thought about it more than she would have told anyone. Not because of the man specifically. She told herself that firmly every morning while she tended the backyard plot, and every evening while she wrote in her research notebook. Not because of the man. Because of the way something in the room had shifted when he looked at her. Like a frequency adjusting. Like the air deciding to be different. She filed it away. She had more urgent problems. The stipend situation had escalated from delayed to potentially cancelled. She had written to the program coordinator in Abeokuta and received 3 identical form responses advising patients. She had contacted the university's international office and been told her case was under review, which was the institutional way of saying nobody was actually looking at it. She had 4 weeks before her visa status came up for review, and if the program officially collapsed, which it was beginning to look like it would, she would leave Korea with nothing to show for it except soil samples, a notebook full of handwritten observations, and the particular kind of exhaustion that came from being failed by systems that had smiled while failing you. She was sitting in Dr. Yoon's kitchen on a Tuesday evening making a list of options that kept getting shorter when Dr. Yoon came in holding a small envelope, her expression puzzled. "This came for you," Dr. Yoon said. "Delivered by hand. No return address." Zinhle opened it slowly. Inside was a single business card. Black. Clean. 1 line of Korean text, and beneath it in small precise English letters: "If your program requires institutional support, this office may be of assistance. No obligation. A phone number. No name." Zinhle turned the card over. Nothing on the back. She sat with it for a long time. Dr. Yoon pretended to make tea and did not ask any questions, which was one of the many reasons Zinhle was grateful for her. She put the card in her notebook and went to bed. She did not call that night. Not the next day either. On the 3rd day, her program coordinator sent a final email. Funding suspended. Participants advised to make alternative arrangements immediately. The language was administrative and bloodless, and it meant that 6 weeks of her life, and all the research she had built in that time, were about to mean nothing on any official record. She took the card out of her notebook. She called the number. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered in Korean, and then shifted smoothly to English without being asked. "Mr. Ryu's office. How can I help you?" Zinhle closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she opened them. "My name is Zinhle Obi," she said. "I believe someone left me a card." The office was not what she expected. Seoul kept teaching her that lesson, and she kept being surprised anyway. She had built something heavy and foreboding in her imagination. What arrived was a building in Uedo that looked like a consulting firm, clean architecture, tasteful art on the walls, a receptionist who smiled with the particular warmth of someone who had been trained to and had also eventually meant it. She was shown to a meeting room. Not his personal office. She noted that immediately. Neutral ground. Professional distance. A deliberate choice that told her something about the kind of man he was trying to be in this context, separate from whatever else he was. She respected it. He arrived 7 minutes later. In daylight, without the candlelit drama of the private dinner, he was different and exactly the same at once. Taller than she remembered. That same economy of movement, nothing wasted, nothing performed. He was wearing a charcoal suit, without a tie, and he sat across from her and placed a folder on the table between them, with the calm of someone who had thought carefully about this meeting before walking into it. "Your program," he said. "Agricultural exchange. Soil irrigation research. 3-month term. Funding withdrawn at source." She looked at the folder. "You did research?" "I was curious." "About my program?" "About you," he said simply. She held his gaze and made the decision not to look away from it. "That is a little unsettling." "I know," he said. He did not apologize for it, which somehow made it marginally less unsettling rather than more. He opened the folder. 3 documents inside. His foundation, registered, legitimate, internationally recognized, had an open grant cycle. Her research profile matched their documented criteria precisely. If she was willing to have her work formally associated with the foundation, her program costs would be covered for the remainder of her time in Seoul. Housing supplement. Research materials. The academic data access. She had been trying to get through the collapsed program for 6 weeks. No strings were named. But Zinhle was not naive about the space between what was named and what existed. "Why?" she asked. He met her eyes steadily. "Because your research is genuinely valuable, and the program that abandoned you does not deserve to benefit from your work." "That is half an answer," she said. A pause. Not a defensive pause. A considering one. "Because I have not stopped thinking about a woman who argued with me about the price of okra," he said. The honesty of that sentence landed in the room like something physical. She looked at the documents. She looked at him. "I want a lawyer to review this before I sign anything." "I assumed you would," he said. He slid a 4th document from beneath the others. "I had one prepare an independent English summary. Take whatever time you need." She took the documents. She left without committing to anything. She came back 3 days later after a contract lawyer, a friend of Dr. Yoon's, had gone through every line with a fine comb and found nothing predatory. Nothing hidden. Nothing that would cost her more than it stated. "I have conditions," she said when she sat down across from him again. He leaned back very slightly in his chair. Something almost imperceptible shifted in his expression. Interest, she thought. Genuine interest. "Tell me." "I publish my research under my name. Full control of findings. No foundation branding on the academic work." "Agreed. I am not a representative or ambassador of the foundation. The association is funding only." "Agreed. I want to meet whoever oversees the agricultural research portfolio. I do not work in isolation from the people directing the funds." "That is me," he said. She blinked. "You personally oversee agricultural research?" "My mother grew up farming," he said. The sentence came out quieter than the others. "Private." Like something that had slipped out rather than been offered. He did not add to it. Zinhle looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up the pen. She signed. And that was how Zinhle Obi entered the orbit of Ryu Chaeon, not through drama, not through fate dressed up as accident, but through a legal document with conditions she had set herself. Which was, she thought as she walked back to Dr. Yoon's apartment that evening, both completely sensible, and somehow the most terrifying thing she had done since landing in this city. For the first 3 weeks it was clean. She worked. He was available for foundation process questions. They had 2 scheduled meetings per week at the Uedo office, 30 minutes each on the calendar, professionally arranged, appropriately structured. She came prepared with updates. He came prepared with resources. It was exactly what it was supposed to be. Except the meetings never ran 30 minutes. Not because of work running over. Because of something else that neither of them named for the first 2 weeks. The way a question about irrigation systems turned into a conversation about what her father had taught her about reading dry soil by its color and smell, and then turned into him telling her about a summer he had spent in his mother's hometown as a teenager, and how the land there had done something to him that nothing in Seoul had ever been able to undo. She started noticing things she did not intend to notice. The way he always stood when she entered the room. Not performatively, automatically, like a reflex from somewhere old. The way he remembered details from previous conversations without referencing notes. The way he asked follow-up questions that proved he had been thinking about what she said long after the meeting ended. She noticed and she filed and she told herself it was professional regard. Then one Wednesday afternoon it rained very suddenly over the Han River, and they were both standing at the meeting room window watching it come in grey and fast, and he said, without looking at her, "You are not comfortable yet." She looked at him. Here. Here. In Seoul. In this? He gestured between them in a way that was both vague and completely specific. You keep 1 foot outside every room you walk into. She was quiet for a moment. That is what you do when you are not sure a room is safe, she said. Is this room not safe? She looked at him directly. I genuinely do not know yet. He turned from the window to look at her then. That is fair, he said. And he meant it. She could tell he meant it in the way that honest things had a particular texture, no performance attached, no attempt to convince. What would make it safer, he asked. She thought about it seriously. She gave him a serious answer. If you told me one true thing about yourself that you do not tell people. He was quiet for long enough that she thought he might redirect. Then he said, I do not want to lead this network for the rest of my life. I have known that for 2 years. I have told no one. The rain came harder against the window. That is a true thing, she said. Yes, he said. She turned back to the window. This room is getting safer, she said. He did not smile. But something around his eyes changed in the way she was learning to read. They stood at the window until the rain stopped. Neither of them opened a work document for the rest of that afternoon. The problem came from 2 directions at once, which in Zinhle's experience was exactly how real problems always traveled, never announced, never solo. The first direction was a woman named Seoul. Seoul was 30 years old and beautiful in the way that required consistent maintenance and delivered consistent results. She had been quietly positioned, by her own family and by several of Chaeon's inner circle, most notably Pyo, as the natural and appropriate partner for the Chaeon heir for approximately the last 2 years. She was not Chaeon's girlfriend. She had never been. But she moved through his world with the ease of someone who had fully decided that was a temporary technicality rather than a permanent reality. And she had enough allies in that world to make her expectations carry the weight of something already settled. Zinhle encountered her at a foundation event she had been mildly pressured to attend as a research participant. She had dressed carefully, deep green, her natural hair high and crown full, not to perform anything, but because she understood that spaces had codes and she refused to enter any space underprepared. She was standing near the far end of the room talking to another researcher about root system adaptation, when she felt a very specific temperature drop on her left side. Seoul appeared beside her with a champagne flute and a smile that had the correct shape, and none of the warmth. You are the African researcher, she said. In English. Delivered with the particular slowness of someone treating language like a favor they were extending. I am a researcher, Zinhle said. Yes. Chaeon speaks very well of your work. A pause that did too much work. He is always so generous with his foundation projects. The word projects landed with specific intention. Zinhle turned to look at her fully. Not aggressively. Simply directly, in the way she looked at everything she was assessing. He should speak well of it. The research is good. Seoul Dani smiled again. Of course. She tilted her head very slightly. You know, he takes on a new project every grant cycle. He is very dedicated during the term. Very present. Another pause. And then the cycle ends and the next one begins. It is very consistent. Zinhle held her glass and her expression with equal steadiness. Then I had better make sure my research is complete and excellent before my cycle ends, she said pleasantly. She turned back to the other researcher and continued the conversation. But something had lodged. Not fear, Zinhle did not do fear as a first response. Something more like heightened attention. A recalibration of what she was actually standing inside. She did not tell Chaeon about the exchange. She turned it over in her own mind instead, the way she turned soil samples, examining it from every angle, applying pressure to different points to see what held and what gave way. She asked herself the question she had been avoiding since she signed that document. What was she doing here? Really? Not in Seoul. Here. In this growing, unnamed, increasingly undeniable thing between her and a man whose world was built on foundations that would never be compatible with anything she came from. She did not have an answer that felt clean. 4 days after the foundation event, Chaeon arrived at their Wednesday meeting 12 minutes late. He was never late. She had been here long enough to know that. He sat down and opened his folder and began the meeting without explanation. She let him run through the first agenda item and then she said, "Something happened." He looked up. "You are 12 minutes late and you have not looked at me directly since you walked in," she said. Not accusatory. Observational. Something happened. He put his pen down. He looked at her then, properly, the way she meant. There was a situation this morning. It is handled. Handled how? The question sat between them. The kind of handled that you would rather not know the details of, he said quietly. She absorbed that. She had known this was part of what he was. She had signed the document with full awareness of the man who had placed it in front of her. But knowing a thing and sitting across from the evidence of it were two different experiences. "Are you all right?" she asked. He looked at her like the question surprised him. Like it was not what he had been expecting her to say. People do not usually ask me that. I am asking. A pause. No, he said. Honest? Raw in a way she had not heard from him before. Not particularly. She closed her own folder. Then we do not do the meeting today, she said. Zinhle. We do not do the meeting, she said again, quietly firm. You are not actually here right now, and I would rather have you present on a different day than absent in the same room. He looked at her for a long moment. Then something in his shoulders released, barely perceptible, the smallest fraction, like a door opening an inch. There is a place near Mapogyu, he said. Small. No one from my world goes there. They make very good jigai. What is jigai? She asked. Come and find out, he said. They left the office together. His security detail followed at a distance that felt like discretion rather than surveillance. They sat in a small restaurant with fogged windows and she ate kimchi jjigae for the first time, and made a face at the first spoonful, and then immediately had 3 more, which made him laugh, a real laugh, short and unguarded, the kind that left his face looking younger by several years. "You laughed," she said. "I laugh," he said. "Not like that," she said. "Not without calculating whether it is appropriate first." He looked at her. "You noticed too much. You noticed a woman with okra and bare feet in a room full of men who kill people," she said. "We are even." He looked at her for a moment that stretched comfortably rather than awkwardly. "Yes," he said. "I suppose we are." They walked back along the river after. Not toward the office. Just along the water, in the late afternoon, without agenda. His security maintained their discreet distance. A few people glanced at them, at her specifically, her height and her hair and the particular way she moved like someone who had never been taught to make herself smaller. He noticed the glances. He did not move away from her. She noticed that he did not move away. "Seoul Dani spoke to me at the foundation event," she said. She had decided to tell him today. Here, away from the office, felt like the right place for honest things. He did not respond immediately. What did she say? Zinhle told him. Precisely, without editorializing. He was quiet while she spoke and quiet for a moment after. "I am sorry," he said. "You do not need to apologize for her," Zinhle said. "I am apologizing for the position," he said. "For the fact that you are in a world where that conversation happens to you because of your association with me." She looked at him sideways. "I can handle Seoul Dani," she said. "I know," he said. "That is not what I am sorry about." He paused. "I am sorry that handling her should not have been yours to do." She thought about that. About what it meant for a man used to managing everything to recognize the things that should not be managed and simply sit with the discomfort of them instead. "Chaeon," she said. "Yes. I am not going anywhere because of Seoul Dani." He looked at her. "I make my own decisions," she said. "That includes the decision to stay in something complicated because the complicated parts are attached to something real. Seoul Dani is not a reason. She is just noise." He stopped walking. She stopped too and turned to face him, and he was looking at her with that expression she could not fully name, the one that appeared when she said something that reached a place in him that his life had built very careful walls around. "You are," he started. "I know," she said. "Okra and bare feet. Still the most interesting thing in the room." He laughed again. She stored that sound somewhere important inside her. The second direction the problem came from was home. Her younger brother Khalid called on a Wednesday morning with a voice pulled tight. Their father had been approached by a development company wanting to acquire the farmland. The approach had the texture of something that would not accept no as a final answer. Khalid said the representative had come twice. The second time he had made a comment, casual, almost friendly, about how it would be a shame if this dry season turned out to be harder than expected. Zinhle sat completely still after the call ended. She knew exactly what that sentence meant. She had grown up somewhere where she understood precisely what that sentence meant. She needed legal support for her family, and she needed it quickly, and she had neither the money nor the right contacts to move fast enough on her own. She sat with it for 2 days. Processing. Planning. Running numbers that did not add up. On Friday morning she walked into the Uedo office before their scheduled meeting time, and found Chaeon already there, standing at the window with a coffee he had clearly not been drinking. He turned when she came in and read her face in the first 3 seconds the way she was beginning to understand. He read everything. "Sit down," he said. Not a command. An offering. She Saturday. And she told him everything, Khalid's call, the development company, the veiled comment about the dry season, her own analysis of what was being implied. She was precise, and she did not let her voice shake even though something behind her sternum was doing exactly that. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet. "Do you want me to look into the company?" he said. "No," she said. He held her eyes. "I know what looking into it means when you do it," she said carefully. "And I am not saying I do not understand why that option exists, or why part of me wants to say yes to it. But if my family's land gets saved through a method that creates another problem somewhere else, that is not actually saved. That is just a different kind of owned." She held his gaze. "Do you understand?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "I understand. But if you have a legal contact," she said. "Someone who handles international land rights through legitimate channels." "I have 3, he said. "I will send you their names and profiles tonight. You choose which one you call." She nodded once. "Thank you." The meeting ended. She gathered her things. "Zinhle," he said. She turned. His expression was difficult to read and very clear at the same time. "Your father's land will not disappear," he said. Not a promise made of air. Something that had been decided before he said it. She looked at him for a moment. Then she left. She called Dr. Yoon that night and said, "I think I am in serious trouble." Dr. Yoon said, "What kind?" Zinhle said, "The kind where I am not sure getting out would actually be the right thing anymore." "Okay. I need you to stop right here. Go to that comment section right now and tell me, do you think Zinhle should have said no when Chaeon told her the land would not disappear? Was that a comfort or a trap? And what do you think Seoul Dani's next move is going to be? I am reading every single comment, so drop your answer below. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now before you forget, because part 2 is where everything detonates, and I mean everything. Like this video too, it genuinely helps this story reach more people who need it. Now let us keep going. The day things shifted from complicated to irreversible happened on a Friday evening. Chaeon's driver came to Dr. Yoon's building with a message asking if Zinhle would be willing to meet that evening. Not at the office. At his residence. She said yes. She got ready without overthinking what getting ready meant. She wore something she felt like herself in, rust-colored, simple, her hair down for once, loose around her face. She looked in Dr. Yoon's bathroom mirror and said out loud to no one, "You know exactly what you are doing." She did. That was the part that was no longer frightening. His apartment in Hanam-dong was large and precisely ordered and contained far more books than she had expected. One photograph on a shelf near the window, a woman in a field of red gold grass, faded slightly at the edges. A private thing left in a visible place. She looked at the photograph for a long moment. "Your mother," she said when he came out of the kitchen. He was wearing an apron over his shirt. The detail was so unexpectedly ordinary that she had to work to keep her expression neutral. "Yes," he said. "Where was that taken?" "Her hometown. South of here, 3 hours." He looked at the photograph briefly. She always said the grass there looked like it was on fire in October. Zinhle looked at it again. "She was right," she said softly. "He cooked." She sat at the kitchen island and they talked while he moved around the space with the comfort of someone who had learned this particular skill from love rather than necessity. He made a soup she did not recognize, something with soft tofu and vegetables that smelled like something warm enough to be a memory. Your mother taught you, she said. She said a man who cannot feed himself needs too much from other people, he said. I like her, Zinhle said. Something crossed his face. She died 4 years ago. Just before I took over the network. The specific weight of that, those two facts sharing one breath, she felt it settle in the room between them. Is that why you took over? She asked quietly. Because she was gone and there was no one left who could tell you not to. He was still for a moment. He continued stirring. I told myself I took over because if I did not, something worse would fill the space. A pause. I still tell myself that. And some days you believe it, she said. She was not asking. And some days I believe it, he confirmed. She watched him. What does it feel like, she said. On the days you do not believe it. He turned the heat down on the stove. He turned to face her across the kitchen island with his hands resting on the counter, and he looked at her with an expression that had no performance left in it anywhere. Like standing in a room that you built yourself, he said, and realizing you forgot to put a door in. The kitchen was very quiet. You have a door, she said. He looked at her. You just have not decided yet whether the cost of using it is worth it, she said. He looked at her for a long time. Then he picked up the ladle and went back to the soup and said, sit down. This is almost ready. She sat down. But neither of them was talking about soup anymore, and they both knew it. They ate at the small table near the window with the city lights below them. They talked for 3 hours. About her father's philosophy of farming and why it produced results that Western methods kept trying to replicate without understanding. About the specific green of the valley near his mother's hometown in spring. About what she wanted to do with her research when she returned home. About whether it was possible to love a place and simultaneously know with clarity that the place was dangerous for you. That last question hung in the air with a weight that had nothing to do with geography. She was the one who named it. Because she had always named things rather than letting them pile up unnamed. I think you know what has been happening between us, she said. He met her eyes across the table. Yes. And I think you know it is complicated in ways that are not small. Yes. So. She held her ground. What do you want to do with complicated? He reached across the table. Slowly. Deliberately. And covered her hand with his in a gesture that had nothing calculated in it, just intention, plain and unmanaged. I want to stop walking away from things because they are difficult, he said. You are the first thing in a very long time that I do not want to walk away from. She looked at his hand over hers. She turned her hand over beneath his so their palms met. Then we do not walk away, she said. But Chaeon, we do this honestly. No managing. No strategy. If something is true we say it, even when it costs something. Especially then, he said. Yes, she said. Especially then. He held her hand and the city moved far below them, and it was not a perfect moment. There was too much complicated weight pressing from every direction for perfect. But it was true. And she had always believed that true was worth more than perfect. She stayed late. When she finally left, standing at his door with her jacket on and her bag over her shoulder, he stood in the doorway, and she turned back once and looked at him with all of it. The complication, the uncertainty, the thing that was growing faster than was probably wise. And she let him see all of it on her face without hiding any of it. He looked back at her the same way. She left. She walked to the car he had called for her, and she sat in the back, and she pressed her palm flat against the seat beside her, the hand he had held, and she thought, whatever this becomes, It is already the realest thing that has happened to me in this city. The morning after that evening, Pyo made a phone call. Pyo had been loyal to Chaeon's father, and had transferred that loyalty to Chaeon with unspoken conditions. Conditions that had never been written anywhere, but existed in every room he walked into. Conditions that included Chaeon staying within the lines that kept the network clean, legible, and free of the kind of external complications that invited scrutiny. A visible emotional attachment to a foreign researcher was not within those lines. Pyo was not motivated by malice. He was motivated by something he had decided was protection of the network, of the structure, of the order he had spent decades helping to build. That conviction was what made him dangerous in a way that simple malice never could have been. He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. He did not go to Chaeon. He went to Seoul Dani first. Told her what he was planning. She listened carefully and said nothing except, "Do what is necessary." Then Pyo made a second call. To someone connected to the development company that had been pressuring the Obi farmland in Abeokuta. He did not threaten anyone. He simply made it known that the woman connected to Ryu Chaeon's foundation had family land currently under dispute, and that an acceleration of that dispute might produce interesting results in Seoul. He connected two completely separate things into one single lever, and then he waited to see what it would move. What it moved was Zinhle. Khalid called on a Thursday morning. His voice was different this time, not tight, but thin. The development company had brought in a government official. The land claim had been formally contested in the local administrative court. A hearing date had been set for 6 weeks from now. The family had no legal representation. Zinhle put the phone down on Dr. Yoon's kitchen table and sat very still. She was thinking. Not reacting. Thinking. The timing was not coincidence. She had been in Seoul for 8 weeks. The pressure on her family's land had been slow and low-level for months before her arrival. It had intensified in the specific weeks since she had become visibly associated with the Chaeon Foundation. Since her name had started appearing in the same conversations as his. She opened her notebook. She wrote 2 questions. Who benefits from my family being pressured right now? Who benefits from me specifically being the pressure point? She looked at the 2 questions for a long time. Then she called Park Jae-hyun, the land rights attorney Chaeon had recommended, the one she had chosen herself from the 3 names he sent. Park Jae-hyun answered on the second ring, listened without interrupting, and told Zinhle she could file an international procedural challenge within 48 hours that would effectively freeze the administrative process while documentation was properly gathered. This is the correct move, Park Jae-hyun said. Do not let the timeline pressure you into bad decisions. I will not, Zinhle said. She hung up. Sat for a moment. Then she called Chaeon. I need to tell you something, she said when he picked up. And I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Tell me, he said. She told him everything. The escalation. The government official. The hearing date. Her analysis. Her conclusion about the connection between the pressure in Abeokuta and the timing of her association with him. She was measured and exact, and she did not name Pyo, because she did not have evidence, only geometry. The silence on his end when she finished was the kind that had texture. Where are you? He asked. University library. North Campus. I am coming to you, he said. Chaeon, you do not need to. I am not coming to fix it, he said. I am coming because you should not be sitting in that library alone with this, and I want to be where you are. That is the only reason. A pause. Okay, she said quietly. He came. He sat across from her with his jacket off, and his sleeves rolled, and he looked at the questions she had written in her notebook. She turned it toward him without being asked, and his eyes moved across her handwriting, and something happened in his face that was very controlled, and behind the control was a fury she could feel from across the table like heat from a room on fire. "Pyo," he said. "I cannot confirm that," she said. "I can," he said. She held his eyes. "Chaeon, what you do next matters. Not just to me. To what you said you want to be." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I know exactly what I am going to do." He leaned forward slightly. Pyo will be removed from his position. Today. Not through violence, through the network's internal governance process, which exists, and which I have been too lenient about using. He paused. The connection he made to the company in Abeokuta gets severed through Baek Jahyun's challenge, and through the Foundation's international partnership contacts, who have significant weight in Nigerian institutional circles. We apply legitimate pressure against illegitimate pressure. She looked at him steadily. That is within bounds. Yes, he said. All of it. And Seoul Dani, she said. He met her eyes. I should have had a direct and honest conversation with Seoul Dani a long time ago, he said. The fact that I did not was cowardice dressed up as politeness, and it created space for exactly this. I will correct that. Zinhle sat with that. With the fact that he was holding himself accountable for the part that was his without deflecting it onto anyone else. She reached across the table and took his hand. Not him reaching for her this time. Her choosing to reach for him. Then we handle it right, she said. Together. And we do not move faster than the evidence allows. He looked at their hands. Together, he said. What followed was not dramatic. It was methodical, and it was effective, and it was the kind of thing that movies skip over, because it does not have the shape of spectacle. But it mattered more than spectacle because it was real. Baek Jahyun filed the procedural challenge within 48 hours. The administrative hearing was stayed pending documentation. The development company's legal position, examined under the light of an international challenge, turned out to be significantly weaker than they had presented to the Obi family. Several of the claimed land rights records had irregularities that the procedural challenge forced into visibility. Chaeon made calls, not the kind that happened below ground, but the kind that moved through the Foundation's genuinely substantial international agricultural development network. Organizations that had partnered with the Chaeon Foundation on research grants had institutional relationships in Nigeria. Those relationships had weight that a locally backed development company could not simply absorb. A journalist who covered land rights violations in West Africa received an anonymous package with enough documented evidence to start asking very specific public questions about the company's acquisition history. The development company withdrew in 9 days. Khalid called Zinhle crying. He could not get full sentences out. He kept saying the land, Zinhle, the land is safe, and then not being able to say anything else for a moment. Tell Daddy, she said when Khalid could hear her. Tell him his daughter remembered how to fight. She hung up and sat in Dr. Yoon's kitchen and pressed both hands flat on the table and breathed. She did not cry. She sat with the relief and let it move through her completely, the way you let rain move through you when you have been waiting for it long enough. Then she texted Chaeon 2 words, "It worked." His response came in under a minute, "I know." Baek called me. "Are you all right?" She smiled at the screen. "Better than all right. Come for dinner. I will cook." A pause. "Then, you cook?" "My father taught me," she typed back. He said a woman who cannot feed herself needs too much from other people. Another pause. Longer. Then, I am on my way. The situation with Pyo resolved the way Chaeon had said it would, through internal governance, cleanly and without public drama. Pyo accepted a full exit. He took it without argument, which told Chaeon that Pyo had known on some level that what he had done crossed a line he could not justify standing behind. With Pyo gone, Seoul lost the architecture she had been operating through. She did not disappear. Seoul was not built for disappearing. She came to the Uedo office 3 days after Pyo's departure and told the receptionist she needed to see Ryu Chaeon. The receptionist called upstairs. Chaeon told her he would be down in 10 minutes. Zinhle was not there for this. She found out about it afterward because he told her, because honesty was the agreement and he kept it. He met Seoul in the lobby. Not an office. Not a private room. The lobby, in plain sight of the reception desk, which was also a deliberate choice. He told her directly and without cushioning what he should have told her 18 months ago, that he had never indicated a romantic future with her, that he had allowed an ambiguity to exist that was unfair to her, and he was sorry for that, and that the ambiguity was now formally closed. Seoul looked at him for a long moment. Her expression cycled through several things he did not try to interpret. Then she said, "She must be something." "She is," he said. Simply. Without apology. Seoul left. She sent him one message that evening: "You are making a choice that cannot be unmade." He showed Zinhle the message that same night, sitting across from her in Dr. Yoon's kitchen after the dinner she had cooked, egusi soup with rice, because she had found the ingredients at a West African goods shop in Itaewon, and because feeding him something from her world felt important in a way she did not entirely have words for yet. He read her the message. She read it herself. She put his phone down. "Are you all right?" she asked. He looked at her across the small kitchen table with the soup bowl between them and a single lamp on because the overhead light had been too harsh, and Dr. Yoon had tactfully gone to bed early. "I am all right," he said. And this time it was true. She could tell the difference now. "She is not wrong," Zinhle said. "It cannot be unmade." "I know," he said. "That does not scare you." He looked at her steadily. "Things that can be unmade are not really choices," he said. "They are just positions. What cannot be unmade is the only kind of thing worth choosing." She looked at him across the table for a long moment. Then she pushed the soup bowl toward him. "Eat," she said. "Before it gets cold." He ate. He told her it was the best thing he had eaten in 4 years. She told him that was either true or very good manners, and she could not tell which. He said, "In this kitchen with you, I have no reason for manners." She laughed. The lamp made everything warm. Outside, Seoul moved and hummed and did what cities do, indifferent to the small enormous thing happening in a tiny kitchen on the 14th floor. She had 5 weeks left. She knew it. He knew it. They did not talk about it every day, but it was present the way the weather is present, not always discussed, always felt. Her research was coming together into something she was genuinely proud of. The paper was shaping into an argument that she believed could actually influence smallholder land policy if it reached the right people. Ryu Chaeon had helped her connect with an academic at Seoul National University who was working on similar questions from a policy angle, and they had begun a correspondence that had the potential to become something more formally collaborative. She was building something real here. That was the part that made the timeline hurt more than she had anticipated. One morning, 3 weeks before her visa review date, she sat in the university library and looked at her notebook, the same notebook she had arrived with, now full from cover to nearly the last page. And she allowed herself to feel the weight of leaving for exactly 5 minutes. She set a timer on her phone. She felt it. The loss already forming at the edges of the time she still had. The shape of the thing she would be carrying back with her, not just research, not just new knowledge, but the memory of a man who had looked at her like she was worth seeing and had proved it by letting himself be seen in return. The timer went off. She closed the notebook. She picked up her pen. She went back to work. That evening she told Chaeon about the 5 minutes. They were walking along the Han River, which had become their unofficial place, no agenda, no phones out, just the water and the path and the comfortable lack of performance. He listened to the whole thing. The timer, the 5 minutes, the deliberate boundary she had set herself. Why 5 minutes? He asked. Because grief is necessary, she said. And because 5 minutes is enough to honor something without drowning in it. He was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother taught you that. My father, she said. He lost a whole crop once. A flood. Everything he had planted that season, gone in one night. I watched him sit outside for 20 minutes the next morning looking at the field. Then he stood up and started planning the next planting. 20 minutes, Chaeon said. He said his loss was bigger than mine, she said. So he got more time. Chaeon stopped walking. She stopped too. He was looking at the river with something in his profile that she had learned to read as the particular expression of a person holding something heavy and deciding whether to set it down. I do not want you to leave, he said. To the river, initially. Then he turned to look at her. I know the timeline. I knew it from the beginning and I chose it anyway, because you were right that time is only nothing if you decide it is. But I want you to know, I do not want you to leave. She looked at him. I know, she said. Is that enough? He asked. It is honest, she said. And honest is always enough. She held his eyes. I do not want to leave either. And I am going to leave anyway, because my work is there and my family is there and my life is there. And none of that means this was less than what it was. He reached out and pushed a curl back from her face. His hand stayed at her jaw for a moment. What was it? He asked quietly. Real, she said. It was completely real. He kissed her there on the path beside the river. Not urgently, slowly, like something being memoized rather than consumed. She held the front of his jacket in both hands and kissed him back with the same quality of attention, present, complete, not already standing in the future. When they pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I have an idea, he said quietly. For after you leave. Tell me, she said. Not tonight, he said. Let me make sure it is actually possible first. Then I will tell you. She pulled back to look at him properly. Ryu Chaeon. If you are about to do something significant without telling me first. I am not, he said. I am doing something significant while asking you first. I just need 48 hours to confirm the logistics. She searched his face. 48 hours, she said. 48 hours, he confirmed. She let go of his jacket. She straightened it where she had held it. An intimate, ordinary gesture that made him close his eyes for just a second. Fine, she said. 48 hours. They walked back along the river. His hand found hers. She let it. Her last week, she asked Chaeon to take her somewhere with land. He took her to his mother's hometown. 3 hours south. A small valley. Terraced fields that generations had shaped into the hillside with patient hands. In the early morning, with mist still sitting low over the green, it looked like the inside of something sacred, the kind of place that made a person understand why people built temples, and why they did not always need to. Chaeon stood beside her at the edge of a field, and she could see in the quality of his breathing that this place reached something in him that no room in Seoul ever had. "You have not been back since the funeral," she said. She was not asking. "No," he said. "4 years," she said. 4 years. She looked out over the terraces. A farmer was moving along the far ridge, small in the distance, unhurried. "She would have liked this," Zinhle said. "Seeing you here." He looked at her. "I think she would have liked you more," he said. She had no tolerance for people who made themselves smaller than they were. She would have appreciated someone who was exactly as large as her actual size. Zinhle smiled at the valley. "Then we would have gotten along." They walked the terraces for an hour without speaking much. It was not the silence of people who had run out of things to say. It was the silence of people who were inside something together that words would only make smaller. At the top of the highest terrace, they sat on a low stone wall and looked out at the full valley below. October sun. That grass his mother had described, red gold, exactly like the photograph, exactly like something on fire in the best possible way. "Tell me what you want the next 10 years to look like," she said. He thought about it seriously. He gave her a serious answer. He talked about the foundation, and what it could become if he gave it the attention it deserved. He talked about the network and the process he had begun, slowly, carefully, with no announcement, of moving the most damaging parts of it toward legitimate structures. He talked about the valley and the idea that had been forming for a year about what could be done with agricultural land like this if someone with the right resources treated it with the right intention. He talked for a long time. She listened the whole way through. "That is a real answer," she said when he finished. "You required it," he said. "And does any of it require you to stay exactly as you are right now?" she asked. He looked at the valley for a moment. "No," he said. "None of it does." "Good," she said. He looked at her. "You are going to keep asking me these questions even after you leave, are you not?" "Absolutely," she said. He almost smiled. Then he did smile. Fully. Reaching his eyes and past them, warming everything it touched. She watched it happen and held it. Kept it. Filed it somewhere permanent. She left on a Tuesday morning. He drove her to the airport himself. He carried her largest bag to the check-in area and stood beside her through the whole process, without once looking at his phone. When the paperwork was done, she turned to find him watching her with the particular expression she had learned was his version of feeling everything at once. They walked to the point where international departures began, and she could not go further with him beside her. She looked up at him. "You are going to finish the foundation restructuring," she said. "Yes." "And you are going to go back to the valley," she said. "At least once before the year ends." "Yes," he said. Something moved in his voice. "And you are going to figure out what the next thing looks like," she said. "Not the network thing. The you thing. What you actually want." "I have been thinking about it," he said. "Think louder," she said. He made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost something else. She picked up her carry-on. She started to turn. Then she stopped. She put the bag down. She turned back fully and walked back to him, and she held his face in her hands, and she kissed him the same way she did everything, with complete intention, fully present, not performing anything. He held her by her waist with both hands and kissed her back with the particular quality of a person memorizing something they cannot keep, but will not let themselves forget. She pulled back. His forehead came down to rest against hers. "Zinhle," he said. Her name in his voice. The way he had learned to say it correctly, over weeks, until it sounded like something he had always known. Ryu Chaeon, she said. This was. I know, she said. I know. She picked up her bag. She put the strap on her shoulder. She squared herself and she walked through the departures entrance, and she did not look back. Not because it did not matter. Because she already knew. 3 weeks after landing in Abeokuta, a package arrived. Inside was a book. A traditional Korean agricultural manual translated into English with handwritten notes in the margins in small precise Korean characters that she now recognized. On the inside cover, in English. Your research was correct on every major point. I have submitted the full paper to 4 academic institutions under your name. 2 have already responded positively. Also, the Foundation is opening a West African Agricultural Partnership office. Lagos first. Construction begins in 4 months. The position of Research Director has not been filled. No obligation. But I thought you should know. The Okra in Lagos, I am told, is exceptional. I intend to verify this personally. She sat on the step outside her father's house with the book in both hands and the farm stretching out before her in the late afternoon, that red earth Abeokuta light falling over everything it loved. She read the note twice. Then she laughed, the same unguarded, crownful laugh that had scattered into Korean mist over a terraced field and made a man remember what it felt like to want something that had nothing to do with power. Her father came out of the house and stood on the step beside her, and looked at his land and then at his daughter. What is happening? He said. She closed the book against her chest. Something is starting, she said. He looked at her the way fathers look at daughters who have become something slightly larger than what they left as. Then he sat beside her on the step, and looked out at the farm he had tended through drought and threat, and everything that had tried to take it from him. Things are always starting, he said. The question is whether you plant it with the right intention. She looked down at the book. She thought about soil. About what grows in unexpected ground when you give it the right conditions, and do not ask it to become anything other than exactly what it is. She thought about a man in a valley full of October grass standing at a stone wall, and telling her what he actually wanted his life to look like. She opened the book to the first page. She started reading. And here is where part 1 ends. But before we get to what happens when Chaeon comes to Lagos, when Zinhle walks back into his world on her own ground, when the people who thought this was over realize it was only just beginning. I need something from you right now. Go to that comment section and answer this. Do you think Zinhle should take the research director position? And when Chaeon comes to Lagos, whose world do you think will be more challenged by the collision? His or hers? Tell me your honest thoughts, because the comment section on this one is going to be alive. If this story did something to you today, if it made you feel something real, hit that like button right now. It costs you nothing and it helps this channel reach every single person who needs a good story in their life. Subscribe if you are not already here. Turn on notifications. Part 2 is where everything you thought you understood about these two people gets tested in ways neither of them saw coming. Seoul has not made her final move. The network restructuring is about to create a consequence that Chaeon did not anticipate. And Zinhle Obi, on her own ground, with her father's red earth under her feet, is about to discover that some things you carry home with you are heavier than you realized while you were carrying them. Take care of yourselves. Until part 2.